The great neutral space station floated silently above a dying star. Ships of all shapes and sizes came and went every day, carrying merchants, soldiers, and refugees. On one quiet afternoon, a large transport ship docked at Bay 7. Its engines were weak and its hull was scarred by the recent war. Hundreds of tired and hungry passengers walked out, their faces showing sadness and fear. Among them was a small alien girl who looked no older than 12 human years. Her skin was pale blue, with faint glowing lines that looked like rivers running across her arms and face. Her eyes were large, silver, and filled with both wonder and terror. She carried nothing but a small crystal pendant tied to a cord around her neck. That pendant was the only thing left from her family, who had been lost during the invasion of her homeworld. The docking bay was crowded and noisy. Officials tried to guide people into lines. Medics moved through the crowd and food rations were being handed out. The little girl stepped forward, holding her pendant tightly. She approached a group of aliens who looked similar to her species. Perhaps they would understand her. She asked for help in a soft, trembling voice, but the group turned their backs. One of them whispered that her markings were cursed, a bad sign from the stars. Another muttered that anyone who helped her would bring danger. Their eyes were cold and their words pushed her away. The girl lowered her head and stepped back, confusion in her heart. She tried again, this time moving to a different cluster of refugees from another world. She asked for food, just a little water, but they shook their heads. Some looked at her with pity, others with fear, but none reached out. Soon she found herself standing alone in the cold metal corner of the docking bay. The noise of the station continued, but to her the world felt quiet and empty. Her name was Lyra, though no one here cared to ask. She sat down on the floor, hugging her knees, the pendant resting against her chest. Her throat was dry and her stomach hurt. She was too young to fight, too weak to work, and too strange to be welcomed. Everyone had abandoned her. At that moment, a squad of human soldiers walked into the bay. Their armor was gray and practical, their rifles slung over their shoulders. They were part of the Earth Defense Forces, stationed here to keep order and protect the station. The leader gave quick commands and the squad began to patrol. One of them, Sergeant Daniel Cross, noticed the girl sitting alone. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes but a calm face. His boots echoed on the metal floor as he walked closer. At first, Lyra looked away, afraid he might chase her off like the others. Daniel crouched down so that he was at her level. His voice was firm but gentle. "Hey," he said. "You look thirsty." She blinked, surprised by his tone. Slowly, he pulled a small water pack from his belt and offered it to her. Lyra hesitated, staring at it as if it were a dream. No one had offered her anything since she arrived. She reached out carefully, her thin hands trembling, and took the pack. She drank quickly, the cool water easing her pain. When she finished, she looked at him with wide eyes full of disbelief. "Thank you," she whispered in broken galactic common. Daniel gave a small nod. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then pressed her fingers to her chest. "Lyra," he repeated it, making sure he said it correctly. "Lyra, I'm Daniel." For the first time since leaving her ruined homeworld, Lyra felt a small spark of safety. She wasn't sure why this human cared, but his eyes showed no fear and no disgust, only a steady kindness. Another soldier called out from behind Daniel. "Sergeant, leave the refugee alone. We've got orders to secure the bay." Daniel glanced back at them, then looked at Lyra again. He spoke in a low voice, almost to himself. "No one deserves to be left behind." He stood and extended a hand toward her. Lyra stared at the hand. She had seen hands before, many that pushed her away, many that pointed and judged. But this one was different. Slowly, with great caution, she placed her small hand in his. He helped her stand. As they walked, Lyra stayed close to him, still clutching her pendant. The other soldiers gave strange looks. Some shrugged, some whispered, but Daniel didn't care. He guided her to a quieter corner of the station, where the air was warmer and food was available. He found an extra ration and gave it to her, watching as she ate quickly as if she thought it would be taken away at any moment. For the rest of the patrol, Lyra followed him silently. Every time another officer or refugee passed by, she shrank behind Daniel, using him as a shield. And each time, he slowed his pace so she could keep up. Later that evening, Daniel's commander questioned him about bringing along a strange alien child. "Why bother?" the commander asked. "She's not your responsibility." Daniel didn't argue. He simply said, maybe not, but someone has to care. That night, Lyra lay curled in a safe corner of the barracks, wrapped in a spare blanket Daniel had given her. For the first time in many nights, she wasn't shivering from fear. She closed her silver eyes, holding her pendant close, and let herself rest. In the quiet darkness, she thought about her family, her destroyed home, and the endless rejections she had faced. And then she thought about the human soldier who had stayed when everyone else turned away. A single whisper escaped her lips before sleep claimed her. Daniel. And in that moment, though the galaxy was vast and cruel, hope flickered once more in the heart of an abandoned child. The next morning on the neutral space station began with the usual hum of machinery, the shuffle of travelers, and the crackle of announcements. Ships came and went as though nothing had changed, but for Lyra everything had. For the first time since her world had fallen, she woke with a blanket over her shoulders and the feeling that someone had not abandoned her. She sat quietly in the corner of the human barracks, her silver eyes watching as soldiers moved around, polishing their armor and checking weapons. Daniel noticed her the moment he stepped into the room. He gave her a small nod and Lyra quickly lowered her head, shy but secretly pleased. He handed her a fresh ration pack and crouched so she wouldn't feel small in his shadow. You need to eat, Lyra, he said firmly but gently. She looked at the package, then at him and whispered, For me? Yes, all yours. She smiled faintly and began to eat. Daniel felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had seen war strip away hope from stronger beings, but here was this small child clinging to life with quiet courage. Building trust, as the day went on, Daniel found small ways to teach her. He pointed at objects and spoke their names in human standard. Water, food, friend, safe. She repeated the words carefully, sometimes stumbling but always eager to learn. When she got one right, Daniel smiled and gave a thumbs up. She laughed softly, a sound so rare that the other soldiers turned to look. Some of them whispered among themselves. One said, She's just a kid, Cross, don't get too attached. Refugees come and go. Another muttered, She's one of the cursed ones. Her people brought war, remember? Daniel ignored them. He had already made his choice. Lyra was not a curse. She was a child who deserved protection. That evening, while others played cards or cleaned rifles, Daniel sat with her and asked about her pendant. She held it out carefully. The crystal glowed faintly in the dim light. Family, she said in her broken words. Mother, father, gone. Her voice shook. Daniel nodded. Keep it close. It's important. He did not press further. He could see the pain in her eyes and he respected it. Whispers of danger but safety on the station was never permanent. War had left scars across the galaxy, and whispers of mercenaries drifted through the marketplace. Traders spoke of bounties placed on surviving members of Lyra's people. Some believed that one of the High Council's children had escaped. That survivor carried the secret to powerful defense codes hidden long ago. One night, Daniel overheard two cloaked figures in the docking bay. She's here, one hissed. The girl with the silver eyes. Find her before the humans do. Daniel's blood went cold. He followed them at a distance, confirming their words. They were mercenaries, hired killers moving carefully between shadows. And they were looking for Lyra. When he returned to the barracks, he found Lyra awake, clutching her pendant as if she somehow knew danger was near. Daniel crouched beside her and whispered, Stay close to me, no matter what happens. She nodded silently, fear and trust mixing in her gaze. The attack, the warning came sooner than expected. Just before dawn, alarms blared through the station. Red lights flashed, and the voice of the station commander filled the air. Attention all units. Unidentified hostile forces have breached Docking Bay 12. All squads moved to defend critical systems. Soldiers scrambled, grabbing weapons and rushing into formation. Daniel's squad was ordered to protect the station's central power core, the heart of its life support and shields. The commander barked, Cross, get moving. But as Daniel turned, he saw them. Mercenaries in dark armor slipping past the chaos, heading toward the refugee quarters where Lyra slept. His heart pounded. He knew what the orders were. The power core was vital. Without it, the station would fall. But if he left, Lyra would be defenseless. For a brief moment, he was torn between duty and his promise. Then he remembered her trembling voice, her soft words. Everyone left me, but you stayed. His decision was made, defying orders. Jackson, take point at the core. Daniel shouted to his second in command. I'll catch up, Sergeant. That's not the plan. Do it, Daniel barked, his voice sharp. He turned and sprinted in the opposite direction, pushing past fleeing civilians and rushing toward the refugee sector. When he reached the quarters, the doors had already been forced open. Sparks rained from broken panels. Inside, mercenaries moved quickly, scanning the rooms. Lyra was gone. Daniel's chest tightened, but then he heard a faint whimper from under a broken table. He dove forward, firing his rifle with precise shots. 2 mercenaries fell before they could react. Another swung a blade, but Daniel blocked with his armored arm and slammed the man into the wall. "Stay down, Lyra," he shouted, keeping himself between her and the attackers. The mercenaries regrouped, their leader stepping forward. "Hand over the girl, human," the leader snarled. "She's worth more than your life." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll have to go through me." The choice that defines humanity blaster fire filled the room. Daniel ducked, rolled, and fired back. His training kept him alive, but the enemy numbers were overwhelming. Lyra clutched her pendant, tears in her eyes, but she refused to run. She watched as Daniel fought with every ounce of strength. Not for himself, but for her. When his rifle clicked empty, he didn't hesitate. He swung it like a club, knocking another mercenary aside. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead, but he stayed on his feet. At last, he grabbed Lyra and pulled her behind him, retreating through a narrow corridor. He locked doors, sealed hatches, and used every trick he knew to slow the enemy. Each step was a promise. He would not leave her. Finally, as they reached a service tunnel, Daniel paused. He placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You have to trust me," he said firmly. Her silver eyes met his. Despite the fear, despite the chaos, she nodded. Trust. The word was small, but it carried the weight of a bond stronger than any order. And as mercenaries closed in again, Daniel prepared to make his stand, not as a soldier following orders, but as a human who refused to abandon the one soul everyone else had left behind. The narrow service tunnel was dim, lined with flickering lights and humming pipes. Sergeant Daniel Cross led the way, his rifle gripped tightly though its power cell was nearly drained. Behind him, the small alien girl, Lyra, clutched her glowing pendant. Every step echoed, reminding them that mercenaries were close behind. Daniel's thoughts raced. He knew he had disobeyed direct orders. He also knew the mercenaries would not stop. They wanted Lyra, and if they caught her, there would be no mercy. Still, he felt no regret. He had chosen this path because leaving her behind was not an option. "Keep close," he whispered. Lyra nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the dim lights. Despite her fear, she walked with surprising courage. The chase suddenly, the tunnel behind them erupted with blaster fire. Sparks flew as bolts struck the walls. Daniel pushed Lyra forward. "Run," he shouted. She sprinted, her small feet pounding against the metal floor. Daniel fired back, each shot precise, keeping the mercenaries at a distance. He ducked behind a corner, reloaded with his last cell, and continued the fight. The mercenaries advanced slowly, their leader shouting orders. They can't get far. The girl is the key. Don't let the human fool you, she's worth more than his whole species. Daniel gritted his teeth. He hated the way they spoke of her, as if she were nothing but a prize. He had seen children turned into tools of war before. He refused to let that happen again. A hidden strength, the tunnel ended at a sealed hatch. Daniel cursed under his breath. They were trapped. He slammed his fist against the control panel, but the lock was jammed. Behind them, footsteps grew louder. Lyra stepped forward, holding her pendant. The crystal glowed brighter than before. She pressed it against the panel, whispering in her own language. Suddenly, the hatch clicked and slid open. Daniel stared at her in shock. "How did you—" Lyra met his eyes. "Family. Codes," she said softly. He realized the truth. Her pendant wasn't just a memory of her parents, it was a key. Perhaps the last secret of her people's lost technology. That was why the mercenaries wanted her. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Good work. Let's move." They slipped through the hatch, sealing it behind them just as blaster fire roared against the door. The final stand. They emerged into a wide chamber filled with storage crates and high catwalks. The room smelled of oil and dust. Daniel guided Lyra behind cover. "Stay low," he ordered. Moments later, the mercenaries burst in from another entrance. Their leader, taller than the rest, pointed his weapon straight at Lyra. "End of the line, human. Give her to us and maybe we'll let you live." Daniel stepped in front of her, rifle raised. His voice was steady. "You'll never have her. The mercenaries opened fire. Daniel rolled behind a crate, returning shots. He moved with skill, using shadows and angles, forcing the enemy to spread out. Still, they were too many. A blaster bolt grazed his arm, burning through his armor. He winced but did not stop. Another shot struck near Lyra, and she cried out, clutching her pendant tighter. Daniel dove in front of her, shielding her with his own body. "You'll be all right," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "I won't let them touch you." Reinforcements. Just when it seemed the fight would end in tragedy, heavy footsteps thundered from the far side of the chamber. Daniel's squad, led by Lieutenant Harris, stormed in. They had realized what was happening and tracked his signal. Blasters lit up the chamber as humans joined the fight. The mercenaries, caught between Daniel and the squad, faltered. Their leader shouted angrily, but one by one his soldiers fell. Finally, Harris shot the leader's weapon from his hands and forced him to surrender. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of machinery and Daniel's heavy breathing. The revelation. Harris approached, glaring at Daniel. "Cross, you defied direct orders. You abandoned your post at the power core." Daniel straightened, his armor scorched and his arm bleeding. "If I hadn't, she would be dead. And if she dies, everything her people left behind dies with her." He gestured to Lyra. "She's more important than any power core." Lyra stepped forward, trembling but brave. She held up her pendant, which still glowed faintly. Last council," she said, her voice breaking. The humans looked at each other in surprise. They finally understood. She was the last daughter of her world's High Council. Her pendant carried the codes to ancient defenses that could one day protect allies of humanity. For a moment, the barracks commander said nothing. Then he gave a slow nod. "You may have broken orders, Cross, but you also saved the future." A new beginning. In the days that followed, the station treated Lyra with new respect. No one whispered curses anymore. No one turned their back. She was given safe quarters, clean clothes, and warm meals. But even with all the changes, she stayed close to Daniel. One evening, as the sun of the dying star cast long golden light through the station's windows, Lyra sat beside him. She tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "Everyone left me, but you stayed." Daniel looked at her, his expression soft. "That's what humans do, Lyra. We stand by our friends." She smiled, a true smile that reached her silver eyes. Humanity shines. The galaxy was still dangerous. Wars would continue and enemies would rise again. But for this one child, humanity had shown its heart. Not through advanced weapons or political power, but through compassion, courage, and loyalty. Lyra had been abandoned by her own kind, but a human soldier had seen her worth. And in that bond, the spirit of humanity shone brighter than any star. As Daniel stood watch over the station, Lyra by his side, one truth echoed across the vast emptiness of space. Humans don't abandon those who need them.